everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have my mid-April wrap-up for you, so let's just get right into it. So this is the first mid-month wrap-up I've done in a little while. I haven't been reading as much the past couple months, but this month I feel like I finally got back sort of on the wagon of reading about, right now, probably a book every day, I would say. I tend to start books at night and finish them the next day. That's sort of been the pattern that I've been following recently. So I actually do have a handful of books for the first half of the month, and it was enough that I wanted to do a mid-month wrap-up. So let's get to the books. So the first book I read this month was A Favor for a Favor. Actually, I read this last month, but I forgot to include it in that wrap-up, so I'm putting it in here. And this is the second book in the All In series, which is a spin-off of the Pucked series by Helena. This book follows Stevie, who is the sister of Rook from book 1, which is A Lie for a Lie. This is his book. And then this is his sister Stevie, who moves into an apartment that Rook, I don't think he owns it. I think the team is paying for it, and she moves into it because he's not living there. He's living with his girlfriend. And so in this one she moves in, and across the hall is Bishop, who is another hockey player for the same team her brother plays for, and he instantly hates Stevie because he thinks that she is Rook's mistress, and he's super mad because he's Rook's got a kid and he's with his girlfriend, and or I don't even know, I think they might be married, so it's he's got a wife and a kid, and he's got this mistress staying in his apartment. So he's kind of a jerk to her at first, he really just cannot stand her, and they kind of start to poke fun at each other, I guess, meeting out in the hall in the morning and whatever, and it sort of goes from there. Rook obviously doesn't want her dating anyone on the team, so there's a little bit of that going on as well, and Rook and Bishop sort of have a little bit of rivalry on the team as well, so that sort of plays into this as well. This one was pretty good. I think I gave this one 4 stars. I did really like Bishop. He was probably one of my favorites of this series, I would say. I do think I like the Pucked books better than these ones, but these ones are still good. Next, I read A Secret for a Secret by Helena. This is obviously book 3 in that same series, and this one I liked, but I didn't love it. I think I gave this one 3.5 stars, maybe 4 stars, I can't remember. But this one follows the goalie of the hockey team, and he is sort of known throughout some of the other books. You see him a little bit, and he's sort of known for being the most I guess tame out of the guys. When they go to the bar, he orders milk instead of beer, and he's just really this one's really got that good boy bad girl thing, except the girl's not really a bad girl, so it's just really, he's just really wholesome, I guess is the best word for it. And he's always drives the speed limit, super cautious of any rules, but he ends up finding out something that kind of disrupts his whole life. So he goes out to a bar to get drunk, and he's sitting there with 6 drinks in front of him, and he doesn't want to drink them because he hates alcohol, but he's trying to get drunk, and he ends up meeting this girl, Queenie, who is at the bar as well. She's just moved there, and they end up hooking up that night, and that's the first time this guy has ever had a one-night stand ever. He's always been a serious relationship kind of guy and whatever. So they both sort of think they're not going to see each other again, and then he goes back to the next hockey season, and he walks in, and she is there with the manager, and he finds out that she's actually the manager of the team's daughter, and she's there now working as his assistant. So obviously there's kind of some forced proximity with that. They're kind of around each other all the time, and she obviously doesn't want her dad to know that she hooked up with one of his players at a bar one night, and he doesn't really want to get in trouble because he's goody two-shoes and whatever. But this one was just, it was really cute, but it was a bit much. The guy, I think the names are what really bothered me with this one. The guy's name is Ryan Kingston, and so everyone calls him King, and so it was King and Queenie, and they would call each other my king and my queen, and that just I really hated that. It really annoyed me. Other than that, I think it was okay, but I didn't vibe with that at all. But I know it was just one of those funny little things that Helena puts often in her books, are little things that are really cheesy and would probably never happen in real life. But I don't know, this one really irritated me, I think because I hate that saying anyway, and so the fact that it was actually their names was just 10 times more annoying. But the book itself was good. Next, I read Stuck With You by Hazelwood. This is the second of her 3 little novella trilogy, I guess you could call it. And this one follows a guy and a girl who get stuck in an elevator in their office building, and this girl kind of has these major issues with this guy, And this one is sort of one of those ones where you're working backwards. You're kind of trying to figure out why they hate each other or why she hates him. And they're not really telling you right off the bat. But I just found with this one, like, it was very easy to guess what the issue was. And because of that, I felt like I was a little bit bored with this one. I think I gave this one 3.5 stars. It was okay, but it wasn't my favorite thing of all time. And honestly, like, it's only been like maybe 2 weeks since I read it, and I don't really remember much, so it wasn't really my favorite. Next, I read Christmas in Quincy by Devney Perry, and this is the actual, like, first book in the Indigo Ridge series, but, or I guess it's called the Eden series. The first book is Indigo Ridge, but I didn't, for whatever reason, I tend to ignore novellas when I read, like, the series order, and so I just sort of disregarded this book and went on to read the first book and the second book, which you could totally do. It was fine, but I would probably recommend reading this one first because the characters in this book do appear in the other books, and, like, you probably would enjoy that more if you knew who they were. But this one follows a girl who decides she just wants to get away from her dad and her stepmother. Every Christmas, her stepmother throws this, like, really insane Christmas party, and she just hates it and thinks it's, like, too extravagant and whatever. So she decides she's going to go to Quincy, Montana, which is where the rest of the series takes place. And she decides she's going to stay at the inn and just, like, enjoy her Christmas by herself. She's booked 3 days. She gets on a flight. And then she ends up, like, a couple hours later, this dude knocks on her door, and she's like, what the heck are you doing here? And it's one of her dad's security guys who has, like, followed her out to Montana, and she's super, super mad because he told her he was gonna stop having people follow her, and, like, that he would, like, lax up on the security, and obviously he didn't because this guy got here so fast that he, like, knew she was going. And it sort of follows their time in Quincy for Christmas. It's really cute. It's obviously very short. It's a novella, so there wasn't a ton of, like, growth in their relationship, and I did find it a tad bit insta-lovey, but I think that might have just been a product of the fact that it's a novella. But it's basically the security guy who has sort of had a thing for her since they first saw each other. They kind of both have, but they've kept it a secret because he didn't want to get fired, and she didn't really see him much because he was kind of avoiding her. And so they are now kind of alone in Montana, stuck together for Christmas. And it was just really cute. Definitely would be a really good Christmas read. Obviously, it's not anywhere near Christmas right now, but it still was really cute. Next was Bloody Heart by Sophie Lark. This is, I think, number 4 in the Brutal Birthright series. And I took a big break between number 3 and 4 because I didn't love number 3. And so I was a little hesitant with the rest of the series. But I finally picked it up again, and this one is a second chance romance between Dante and Simone. They meet when they are, I believe, like, late teens, like maybe like 19 and 20 or 18 and 20, and she is from, like, a very, like, fancy family, and he's obviously, like, a mafia kid, and so her parents, like, totally don't approve of him at all, and she ends up finding out that she is pregnant right before her parents sort of send her off to Paris or London or something, and she goes to tell him, but he shows up, like, completely covered in blood or whatever, and she's like, I can't have my kid anywhere near this guy, like, I'm not gonna tell him, and she moves off to Europe or whatever, and they don't see each other for years. She ends up doing all kinds of stuff that he sort of is seeing her still, and they're not talking, whatever, and then they bump into each other at an event, like, 9 years later. And this one was really cute. I actually really like this one. I feel like a lot of people didn't like this one. It was pretty good. I guess if you don't like Second Chance, you probably wouldn't like this, but I thought it was done well, and I felt like the reasons for their split to begin with were sort of justified. Sometimes I feel like they, like, just, like, split up for no reason, but this one I feel like it made a lot of sense and was very, like, continuous throughout the story. Like, it made sense in the context of the book, and I like that. I gave this one 4 stars. Wasn't my favorite of the series, but I did really like it. Next was Broken Vow by Sophie Lark, which is the next book in the Brutal Birthright series. I knew from the time I started this series that this one was going to be my favorite. As soon as I heard that it took place on a ranch, I am such a sucker for small town romances. It is not even funny. Like, you can mention a ranch or a farm or, like, a small beach town, whatever, anything in a book, and I will automatically probably raise the whole rating by a star, no matter what else happens in the book, because I am just, like, obsessed with that. And so I knew this one was going to be my favorite, and I'd heard a lot of people talking about how much they really liked the guy in this one, and I sort of actually fell in love with him at the end of the last book, because there's like a little moment where he meets the girl that he's gonna end up dating in his own book, and she's like super rude to him, and he just kind of laughs it off. He's like, I think she likes me. And I don't know why, but that like one line just like really did it for me, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna like him. And so in this book, we're following Riona and Raylan, I think is how you say it. I kept pronouncing it Rylan in my head when I was reading, but I'm pretty sure it would be Raylan. And they meet at the end of the last book, but then Raylan goes off again, and now Riona is being threatened. Basically, someone has attempted to kill her, and they don't know who, and they have to find out who, but until then they need to hire a bodyguard for her, because obviously, like, she can't just be walking down the street alone. And so her brother is like, well, I know who to hire, and she's like, nope, no way. And he's like, no, he's perfect, like, I'm gonna call him and whatever. And it's Raylan, who is Dante from the last book's friend from the military, basically. And so he calls him and he's like, I need you to come, like, basically be a bodyguard for my sister, like, she needs help and whatever. And so he comes, and she like cannot stand him at first because he's following her everywhere, and he's like ruining her dates and different things, and it's just like, it's so cute. And then obviously they end up, he's from a ranch, I think in Tennessee, and at one point they obviously end up there because, like I said, I knew this book took place on a ranch. It's not the whole book that's on the ranch, but like a good enough portion of it that you get like those small town vibes if you're looking for that. And I just really loved their whole dynamic in this book. Like, they're really the definition of like opposites attract. Like, she was so like uptight and professional and whatever, and he was just so laid back and like didn't care about anything, and I really love that. And like I said, I knew this one was gonna be my favorite. It was. I did finish the series, and this is still my favorite. And so definitely read this one if you're going to read any of those books. Like, if you only want to read one, read this one. Next, I read Below Zero by Hazelwood, and this is the third and final novella in the little series. And this one, I feel like, is so hard to describe. I always feel like with novellas that it's hard to say anything without it almost seeming like a spoiler, but I'm not even really sure if you can have a spoiler with a novella because they're so short that basically the synopsis itself is the spoiler. But this one sort of follows a girl's journey, I guess, through getting to work at NASA, but it's all shown through her interactions with this one guy who was working there. And it's flashing back and forth between that, like in the past when she's like going to meet with him and whatever, and she's in school and things, and it's flashing between that and the present where she's stuck like in the snow and ice in Norway somewhere, and he is basically rescuing her. And so it's flashing back and forth between those two like time points, and this one was probably my favorite out of all of them, which is funny because just based off the covers I would have picked this one as my favorite. But I did really like this one. Like I said, I feel like I can't say much without it being spoilery, but it's really cute. I think this one, like I said, was my favorite. I gave this one 4 stars. Next was Heavy Crown by Sophie Lark. This is the last book in the Brutal Birthright series, and this one follows Sebastian, and I think her name is pronounced Helena. It's either Helena or Helena, I think, and I don't know which way it is, so I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. But it follows them, and this one I was a little iffy on. This one, basically, Sebastian is out walking one night and he sees this girl being thrown into a trunk of the car, and he is kind of like, whoa, like, I gotta go save her. So he runs over and he's like saving her, and he beats up the guy and whatever, and they end up hanging out that night and getting to know each other a little bit more. And you're like, oh, this is so cute, like, he's like saved this girl and, you know, whatever. And then right off the bat you find out that she is somehow like leading him on, like her father has told her to get his attention, and she is the daughter of like, I think, a rival mafia family. I'm pretty sure she's part of the Russian mafia and he's the Irish or the Italian mafia. I always get those two mixed up between the Gallows and the Griffins, but 2 different like mafia families basically, and her dad has sent her out to get his attention, and he doesn't know it, but you as the reader know it like right off the bat that there's something up. I don't want to like spoil it because like a lot happens in this one, but I will say I didn't really vibe with Helena at the beginning of the book. I don't know, I didn't like that we knew that she was sort of had ulterior motives. Like, I think I would have liked it if that was more like a plot twist at the end, but I didn't like knowing that everything they were doing was kind of fake. But I did sort of like how it all played out in the end, like how that was handled and everything. And overall, it was a good book. I gave it 4 stars. Like I said, the last one I talked about, Broken Vow, was still my favorite one in the series for sure. But this one was good, and I think it was a good conclusion to the series. It also like really sets you up for the Kingmaker series, which I am crazy excited to read. I think I'm going to vlog that when I do it, but I'm currently reading the Underworld series because I read that that's also part of the Kingmaker series, so I'm trying to read like all of them before I go into that series. Speaking of which, the last book I have read so far this month was Ivan. I don't know if it's Ivan or Yvonne. I'm going to say Ivan. I feel like I don't know how to pronounce any of these names, and this is the first book in the Underworld series, which, like I said, I picked up solely because at the end of Brutal Birthright, they suggest that this goes with the Kingmakers. So I was like, okay, I'll read this first. And this one had a ton of potential. Like, so much potential. This could have so easily been a 4.5-star book for me. And it just, like, really missed the mark on, like, every front. This one starts with a girl who is basically like an assassin or a hitman or whatever you want to call her, and she gets all of these sort of targets that she's going to hit through a broker. So she never knows who hired her or why they want this person dead. She just knows she has to kill them. So she gets a like deal, I guess, for this basically mafia boss, and she has to go kill him. So she's watching him for a little while, and she realizes that she can, sneak into his house, and she's like all the way into his bedroom, ready to stab him in the neck with a needle and kill him, when he wakes up and tackles her. And he's obviously now like got her like captured in his like dungeon, basement, whatever thing you want to call it. And that for me was like such a good setup to the start of the book. Like I loved the like dynamic and like how it shifted and everything, and like I really loved that, and I felt like it was set up really well. But I really hated just like everything after that, because literally the first day she is there, you're sort of hearing like her internal monologue, and she's going on and on about how her dad trained her to like withstand torture and whatever, and how she's never gonna break to this guy and blah blah blah. Literally, I'm not even kidding, within 5 minutes she tells him everything he wants to know, and the next day she's sleeping in his room and he just like doesn't care what she does anymore. And for me, I was just like, what on earth happened? You've known this girl for 24 hours and you went from her literally being your prisoner to like now she's just chilling in your room doing whatever she wants. And I don't know, it was so insta-lovey. It was super like weirdly paced, I felt. And I don't know, the whole thing was just so strange to me. And I gave this one 2.5 stars just because, like I said, it was so strange to me. And I will say, I actually just finished the second book. I'm not gonna like really get into this because it's gonna go in my like final wrap up, but I just finished the second book and I didn't love it either, so I'm like really hesitant with this series. I thought that this one might have just been like a little off because it was the first one in the series. It's a little bit shorter than the rest, so I thought maybe it was more just like an introductory book. But also there seems to be no connection between the characters in each of the books in this series, which is so strange to me too. But I don't know. I don't know how I'm vibing with that. If you've read it, let me know if it like does get better at any point, because I'm not really feeling it right now. But anyway, those are all the books I have read so far this month. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you next time.